Well, hello everybody. Danny back from Deepsouth Homestead. Guys, the heat is just going on, but you know what? To be honest with you, it's the time of the year. It's July. I mean, July is always hot in the Deep South. Now, there have been some occasions where I can remember on the 4th having some cold fronts that came through years ago. And the temperature was pleasant. Now, it wasn't by any means cold, but it was pleasant. But we have had, I check my temperature here on my thermometers. I don't necessarily go by what computer says because it can be manipulated. I have to look at I have mercury thermometers right out here. And I go by the mercury thermometers. And then I try to take the relative humidity and try to figure out where I'm at from there. But nevertheless, it has been a longer streak of heat than we are accustomed to here without rain. Now, it has rained all around us. It's raining around us right now as I'm making this video. This is Sunday. It is 10:22 in the morning. I just got back from Pecan Grove. I went over and fed the animals and stuff like that. And the wind is blowing a fairly good amount, which is something that has not been happening. We have had no wind. It's been just dead still. And we've had virtually no rain. Everybody around us is getting it except us. And I'm not going to complain about it because the Danny corn is drying over at Pecan Grove. And now they've had a little bit more rain than we have, but my ponds, we got a little freak storm come through the other day, or actually came through at night, like 10:30 at night, totally unexpected. We got 3 inches of rain in about 2 hours. Now, when you get a rain like that, it mostly just runs off because our ground was so dry, it was like concrete here, and it just runs off. The ponds were about 5 foot low, now they're about 3 feet low. I mean, it put a little bit of water in the ponds. The front pond, sad to say, we lost a lot of fish in it because it got down so low that I come home one day and all I seen just the top of the water was just black looking, and I looked out there and the fish was up on the surface of the water because it had been with heat indices way over 100 degrees for just weeks on end. I think a week ago we was at day 42 with heat indexes over 100 degrees, and the evaporation from the ponds, you know, these are not big ponds. They're like half an acre, one of them, and the other one's an acre and a half. They're not very big, and evaporation really takes place in those when you hadn't had any rain for weeks on end in that kind of temperature. But the fish were on top of the water. I could see them just schooling on top of the water. I told Wanda, I said, I've never seen that before. And 2 days later, I came back from being gone, and there were dead fish all over the water everywhere. Just the oxygen content in the water was just so hot. I went in there and put my hand in the water. And guys, it was like somebody turned a hot water heater on and just let boiling water run out of a hot water heater. That pond was so hot. I told Wanda, I said, she was, got a spider web on me here if I sit down here. She was just sad about losing all those fish. And I told her, I said, look, there ain't nothing we can do about it. The Lord knows the situation, and He knows we don't have any rain, and that we need some rain. And then I think it was the next day or the next night we got the 3 inches of rain in a couple of hours, and I got up the next morning looking, and the ponds had come up, you know, a couple of foot. And the back one here has been doing fine. It hasn't had any effect on it. Now, with no rain and that kind of heat, my sweet potatoes are okay, but the vines have not really been growing that much, and the grass is starting to come up in them, and it's taking its toll on them. It's getting pretty bad in them. But there's not really a lot I can do about it right now, because if I go to pulling up the grass, I'm going to uproot the vines and stuff like that. My Cocozelle squash I had here, they are, they're doing okay. I was really surprised through the heat and no rain that they were actually going to do good. I'm trying to save them for seed, and I took the seeds out of a couple of them, but They were real plump and firm and everything, but once they dried, they're not as plump and firm as they were. And I'm kind of curious as if they're going to be viable or not. I'm going to take a few of them out and plant them just to see what goes on. Now, other than that, guys, I mean, all of our gardening is basically over. We don't plant this time of the year. We've always told y'all June and July, July and August are 2 months. We don't grow anything here at Deep South. We don't plant anything new or anything like that. We try to just let whatever's growing run its course, and then mid-September we'll begin to amend the soil and get the gardens ready for a fall garden. Lots of people ask us, when do we start this or when do we do that? And that's pretty much been our schedule. Wanda and I have learned that over the years of doing this. Now, the high tunnels, we do keep a few things going in the high tunnels, but even them in this extreme heat, if we don't keep them watered sometimes twice a day, they just the heat just gets to be too intense. And that's with all the vents open, the sides rolled up and everything. The outside air temperature is just that hot. The only thing that saves them is the 40% shade cloth that's over the top of them. That's pretty much the only thing that keeps plants in them from burning up. But, other than that, there's not a lot to report on. My figs had started getting ready, and the tree evidently had two batches. One of my trees evidently had 2 batches of figs on it, because we started noticing the birds were hitting them pretty hard, and we went out and harvested a couple of gallons off of them, and then all of a sudden there's no figs, there's just little tiny green ones everywhere. And that's usually a sign that the first group of figs that came on, we had a very late freeze here this year, and it must have got all of the first ones that came on, except for a few, and then it put on another group of figs. So we won't be getting any figs probably for, judging by the size of them, it looks like it'd be a couple of more weeks before they even get anywhere close. Now, we have a big fig tree out here between the high tunnels, and they're all not much bigger than a marble. And I know how figs are. When they start getting enough rain, that can change in a day or two. So usually July is the month where we pick figs. We usually pick 30 to 50 gallons off our trees, but this year I'm really skeptical if we're going to get that. We've got a few apples. We don't have any peaches. We picked 1 peach off one of our trees. All the other peaches, the blooms froze and died. We have several apples on some of our trees. But other than that, we don't really have anything else growing here. We got our sweet potatoes. We got our Danny corn. I've got my Star of David okra. I'm saving for seeds right here. We have our white okra at Pecan Grove, and we're saving one of the 2 plants over there for seed, because we have fallen in love with that okra also. That is some of the best okra I think we have ever come across. And thanks to the subscriber who brought that to my house and gave it to me, it was just wonderful. Never even knew white okra even existed, but that has been a blessing to us. Other than that, not a lot to report on. Garden-wise, fruit tree-wise, high tunnel-wise, it's the time of year, everything just kind of, lots of people look at the summertime as, man, that's where we ramp up things. Well, in the Deep South, in the summertime is when we shut things down. We ramp our stuff up in the wintertime. That's when the fall and the winter is when we really ramp our work up, because that's the only time at our age that we can really get out and do anything. Now, Wanda and I might make it till 10 o'clock during the day, and after about 10, we don't go back out and do anything. Our bodies just won't allow it in this extreme heat that we're having. Now, is it any different? No, because, gosh, when I was in my 20s, I was sawing logs in a river swamp, and I can well remember the actual temperature that summer for weeks was 110, 113 for those weeks that I was sawing in that river swamp, and there was no breeze down in that swamp. I mean, I was cutting big old magnolias and white oaks and bay trees and stuff like that, gum trees. having to cut them down, cut all the limbs off of them for the equipment to be able to get them out of there. And when I was younger, I could handle that heat like that, but now that I'm older, I just can't take the heat anymore. I mean, I had a heat exhaustion one time, and ever since then, my body, I'm very susceptible to heat, and that's why Wanda and I are very careful about that now. But you know, I mean, where do we actually go from here? Everybody, guys, there's so many false narratives out there, and the mainstream media is very good at keeping our attention focused in specific directions as a nation or as a group of people, however you want to look at it. And you know, we had the implosion of the little submarine going down to the Titanic, and for weeks that's all you seen. Now, there was so many lies told during that it almost made me sick at my stomach. There's so many things about that was questionable. We knew up front that they were making phone calls, because there's three kinds of phones. You know what I mean? There's satellite phones, the phones like we use here, and then there's oceanic phones that can be used underwater. And we know that phone calls were being made through this, and the ship actually shut the phone calls off so that all the records couldn't be got into and stuff. I mean, there were so many things that was just done underhandedly in all this. But what was this about? During this whole time of this taking place, our attention was focused on just that, because it literally encompassed all news everywhere. The gatekeeper's done a fantastic job of keeping our attention focused on that, while behind the scenes, food laws were being passed. The fake meat, I call it fake meat. I mean, it's printed. I mean, I call it stem cell meat, whatever you want to call it. It was grown, lab grown meat, whatever you want to call it. Junk. Let's just call it junk. Bills were passed that made it legal for that to be sold as actual meat. And I actually looked into that, how that they take that big giant machine and put the actual cells in it, and in a certain amount of time, that machine just grows completely full of this meat, and then it can be, depending on what kind of a creature it come from, it can be formed into thighs or breast meat or whatever, you know. And I was like, there's no way this is healthy. I don't care what anybody says. It goes against God's creation. And when you go against God's creation, I don't care what the data says. I don't care what the science is behind it. It's just not right. It's like people talk about genetically modified stuff. Oh, everything's genetically modified. Through centuries, stuff has been genetically modified. No and yes. Okay? Yes, genetic modification takes place. I get that. I totally get that, and I get how it happens. But when you take a particular seed from a particular plant and you personally splice in a known chemical like BT or something like that for corn that's known to, you know, kill any soft-bodied worms that gets in the corn, all this. And when you take and start splicing that kind of stuff into a seed, and you call that genetically modified organism a natural occurrence in nature, that is not true. That is a false narrative right there. It is not accurate. It is not healthy. It's known now that when you eat stuff that has genetically modified organisms in it, it mutates in the gut. It causes all kind of gut issues. This store-bought, people buying stuff from the grocery store, you're just killing yourself, man. I mean, how else can I say it? All the food from the grocery stores is toxic. I mean, it is not healthy. You go, well, I buy from the produce department. It's still not healthy. They irradiate all that stuff. Look at the shelf life of it. Half of it, a normal bell pepper. You pick a bell pepper and put it in the refrigerator, in 2 or 3 days, it's going to go bad. If it's a real bell pepper. The enzymes in it begin to break down, and it forms a bacteria in it that actually eats it up. It just dies, it rots. But when you can go to the grocery store and you can buy a bell pepper that's already several days old before you ever get it, because it's been trucked from God knows where in Mexico or Southern California or Southern Florida or somewhere like that, to get it there, and it's been on the road for days to get it there, and then it sits on a shelf for days, and it ain't rotted? No, that's called irradiation. They have irradiated all these foods and stuff like this to kill any living enzymes in them. And we've talked about this before. You know, I mean, that's why the purple pill, you want to call it that, has become was so popular. People goes, well, I get indigestion if I eat this stuff, or I get heartburn. What do you expect? You eat junk from a grocery store. It has no living enzymes in it to create any acid in your stomach to eat anything up. And when you eat it, you might as well be putting cardboard in your system. I mean, and it goes down into your gut, in your belly, in your stomach, and your stomach's got to start creating all this extra acid just to break it down, because it has no enzymes in it that's alive whatsoever. And when your gut creates and your stomach creates all this extra acid, and you get an acid reflux, you go, man, I don't know why I got all this acid reflux. Well, you got no living enzymes in your food. And then people tell me, well, I don't eat no genetically modified corn. If you buy something from a grocery store that's in a freaking box, you eat genetically modified corn. I mean, you've got modified food starch, modified corn starch. I mean, you've got all kinds of corn chips, and I mean, it don't matter. Corn is in everything in a box. Everything in a grocery store has got some form of corn in it, unless it's a box of oatmeal. And I'm even beginning to question that. You know what I mean? All your cereals that's out there, and we wonder why children have so many autoimmune problems, and they live off of milk that comes from these dairies in the United States, that they have known pathogens in them, that we know that certain diseases run rampant in these dairies, and they won't shut them down, because if they did, they'd have to shut all the dairies down. People have these Crohn's disease and all that. We know that comes from the dairy. I mean, that's a known fact. That's why you see so many homesteaders now looking for cattle that are A2 type milk. Milk that's naturally homogenized, like a goat or something. It can be, your body don't have to break it down. 70% of the world's population has problems breaking down milk. 70%. Now, what's wrong with that picture? Milk, well, I can tell you what my daddy used to tell me. Bless his heart. I love my daddy. You know what I mean? My daddy was a good man. Now he had his ways. He had some ways I didn't like, but I'm sure I had some ways he didn't like either. But my daddy was a good man, and he told me, he said, he saw me drinking milk one day, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him, I said, "Drinking a glass of milk." I said, "You drink milk?" He eat milk. Let me take that back. He had buttermilk and cornbread at night. Ice cold buttermilk and cornbread. That's what he drank. He just, sometimes he'd eat that for supper. And he said, "No, son, I don't drink milk." And I told him, I said, "Now wait a minute." I said, "Wait." I said, he said, "That's buttermilk right there." He said, "That's good for your gut." He said, "That junk you drinking over there, straight out of that cow like that, you buy from a grocery store," he said, "that ain't even real, son." He said, "Give me the name." My daddy was good about this. "Give me the name of a mammal that once they're weaned continues to drink milk." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I couldn't think of nothing. And I still don't know nothing." He said, "That's what I'm talking about." He said, "We're mammals. We're warm-blooded creatures." He said, "We're the only creature on the face of the earth that continues to drink milk after we're weaned." He said, "We really don't need it." He said, "People think, oh, well, you look at those cows out there in the field you got, son." He said, "Them calves drink milk for about how long?" I said, "Well, I let mine drink it for about 6 months, sometimes 5, 6 months." And he said, and they tell you that you got to have all that milk to make your bones strong and healthy. I said, yeah. He said, that little old calf grows up to be a big old cow and his bones are just as strong and healthy. He said he's getting all his needs from the grass. He just eats grass and weeds. And yet he gets all the calcium he needs. So explain to me why you need to keep drinking milk. My daddy was good about that stuff. And that is what's happened to a lot of our children. They sit back and they drink all this store-bought milk, this 2% skim milk, because they think that's more healthy for them, which is the worst junk in the world you can drink. Look at that stuff under a microscope lens, guys. Look at it. Looks like little shards of glass going all through your arteries and your veins. And your intestinal tract and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not here to down milk or anything like that, but I don't drink milk. I haven't drank milk since I was a small boy. You know, I watched my brothers and sisters eat milk and cereal and stuff like that. I never did, hardly. I mean, a couple of times I did. If I eat cereal, I would usually eat something like Raisins bran or something of that nature, and I just ate it dry. Or I would eat granola cereal, and then with the nuts and the pecans and the oatmeal and stuff like that. And my mama would make cereal out of oatmeal and dates and pecans and almonds and this type of stuff. And I would eat it dry. It's just what I did. And my brothers and sisters would make fun of me doing it. So how can you eat that dry stuff without any milk? I said, I don't like the taste of milk. So when we had this implosion take place, there were particular laws that got passed in Congress that nobody said nothing about. And I got to looking into these companies that are making this stuff, and one particular man's name kept coming up in every one of these companies. He either was a shareholder in it, a big-time stockholder, an owner, part owner in it, like 4 different companies, or 4 or 5 different companies I looked into there, and that was Mr. Gates. His name was on all these, and yet he was really pushing this lab-grown meat. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not going to eat lab-grown meat. I'm just not. I'm not going to do it. As long as I have breath and I have a way to trap, hunt, do whatever I'm going to eat an animal out of the wild if I have to. And I know, yes, I already know that some diseases has been implemented into the wildlife, specifically the deer, because it's a very known fact that people go, well, I'll just go kill me a deer if he ain't no meat. Well, no, you and about 300 million other people are thinking the same thing, and there ain't that many deer out there. And they have already implemented some viruses and diseases into the population, and it's taking its toll. So don't think that you're going to get anything that's any different than anything else, because most of these hunters are going out buying bagged corn from a feed store, Walmart or something like that, pouring it out for the deer to eat, and it's all genetically modified. So the deer that you're killing the meat has been contaminated with genetically modified corn. Most of the deer guys, especially up in the northern countries, states, they hunt over cornfields and stuff like that, and most of the cornfields up there is genetically modified. All those deer are eating that kind of stuff. They eat on the soybeans out of these fields. The soybeans are Roundup ready, all soybeans all been screwed around with. All this kind of stuff. They're eating deer that's been eating all this stuff. You're not eating anything any different than if you just went to a grocery store and bought it. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. Now here where I live, I don't have anyone around me that raises corn except for a few neighbors that raises some sweet corn up the road right up here. And I got one neighbor way up the road. He tries to raise some corn. Not very successful at it. I think you can tell it's genetically modified corn. It got up just by the way the leaves grow up on it. Looks like Pioneer, to be honest with you. It got up about 3 feet tall. It's field corn now. It got up about 3 feet tall and all tousled. And because we didn't have any rain, it looked like most of it pretty much didn't even make any ears on it. I looked at it from the road the other day and I didn't see any ears on it anywhere. The little puny little stalks out there ain't much bigger in diameter than your thumb. And just all about timing. I mean, last year he raised a fantastic bumper crop of corn. And this year, I don't know if he gets anything out of it. I'll be really surprised, because he got it in too late because of the cold weather. But guys, all these false narratives go up to get our attention focused in specific areas. And when they do that, we get our eyes off of the real thing that's going on. And they pass laws during this time, and the media doesn't care about that. They want to be on the big story. And that's why the MSM, I mean, it's not to be trusted. You know, you just really shouldn't trust it. You need to know inside people personally, that you can get your information from personally, not over a phone. If somebody sends me a message over a phone or email, I don't take it, I don't really put any kind of clout in it, because it can all be tampered with. AI can tamper with anything now. And I don't, if I get an email or something, I don't take much clout in it, you know. Unless I know you personally and I know your way of thinking, and I can talk to you face to face at some point, and we can discuss what questions you asked or whatever. You know, I don't put much clout in it at all. I mean, even me doing this video right here, it can be, AI could alter it and take my voice and make me say anything. And I really didn't even say. It can do it. So, it's getting close to dinner time for me. It's getting to be close to 11 o'clock now. I'm going to take off and go get me a bite to eat. And you can see every now and then, I guess you see the flag every so often back here. And you can see the timber's been cut. See back there? I mean, it looks horrible. We're cloudy and windy. They got some rain all around us. That's the only reason I'm on the porch today, because normally it would be so screaming hot that I couldn't even sit here because of the sun coming through behind where these trees are here, or used to be. They're not there no more. What trees you see is on my property right here at the border, and then there's a few, and there's a little swamp back in here. Thank the Lord they didn't cut the swamp down, but they cleared right up to it. I mean, everything. And it just breaks my heart, but we knew it was coming. Nothing we can do about it. We just wait now and see how it transpires from this point forward. And we'll praise the Lord as much as we can. And guys, be cautious about how you grow stuff from this rest of this summer into this fall into 2024, because the growing conditions are going to get way worse. Now, there'll be those that have great crops because there's microclimates everywhere. My gardening right here in front of my cabin, this is probably last year I'm going to put it here. Since they cut all this timber now, the sun will be on it from the morning to the evening, and I can't grow a garden where that happens, because we all know that if you don't have at least 5 hours of shade on your garden in the evening, it's probably not going to make very good. So this one will probably just be leveled off, let it go back into grass, and I'll just plant over at Pecan Grove and make up for this over there, because I can pick a place over there where the conditions is right, and I'm not going to be cutting the trees. So, but anyway, let me go get a bite to eat, guys. And once again, I know porch time today ain't been no real big elaborate thing, but I just want to share some thoughts with you. And let's just be conscious of what's really going on around us, and not fall for everything that the mainstream media throws out there. Most of it is a false narrative that's just not true anyway. So it's half truths. Most everything is a half truth. They tell you just enough of the truth to make you believe it, and then the rest of it's just a lie. And it's sad that we've demised to that point in this country. But it's all about, it's a lot like YouTube. It's all about views, numbers, all this kind of stuff. I don't really care about all that stuff. Wanda told me the other day, she said, we are up to over 50 million views. And I was like, what? I said, is there that many crazy people in the world? I mean, that's just, she busted out laughing, but, you know, I don't go for the numbers and I don't go for the views and all that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to just be honest with you and tell you just some bare facts, and let's just try to do the best we can. Let's just get through this thing together. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's just try to be focusing on learning from each other and not trying to break each other down. I mean, there's so much of that breaking each other down going on, especially amongst YouTube channels. And that's one reason I'm just falling out with most YouTube things going on, because I'm just like, it's like there's cliques being created and all this kind of stuff's being done. And I told Wanda, I said, I don't care about all that stuff. I'm just going to be who I am. I'm going to love the Lord. I'm going to love all you who want to be loved, and I'm going to try to show you what I know. If I think it works, I'm going to show it to you. And if I tell you, if I don't think it'll work, I'm going to tell you I don't think it'll work. And I'm going to just do the best I can do. And that's what I encourage you to do. Do the best you can do. Now, I did tell on the live stream the other night, based on the gamma rays, you know, that's coming out of the earth's soil now, we're seeing better results from planting in the cattle mineral tubs, 10 to 12 inches off the ground. It seems like in a shaded location, half sun, half shade, we're having a lot better results from stuff like that than we are stuff just planted directly in the ground. And I've always grown in the ground, and some things will continue to be planted in the ground. I'll plant my potatoes and my sweet potatoes and my squash and stuff like that. Probably my okra, but you know, there'll be some things like tomatoes and peppers and, you know, things to this, eggplants and stuff to this nature. I'll probably start doing more container gardening and seeing if I can't do a better job. So, guys, if you're in that 33rd parallel to 35th parallel I was talking about Saturday night, just heads up, your weather's going to be crazy. And just be careful. Take care of yourself. Take care of your gardens. Do the best you can do. I mean, we can't control the jet streams. We can't control the weather. Man tries to manipulate it as much as he can. We all know God's still really in control, but sometimes God permits things to happen, especially when He's lifted His hand off of a nation. It's in the Bible. The verses is in the Bible where He talks about it's going to rain on one city and the other city will burn up. I mean, you know, He's got those verses in the Bible. It talks about all that stuff, and it's part of a curse upon a nation when that happens. And all we can do is sit back and say, Lord, forgive us. And when we don't pray, when specific things start happening, and we don't take it to the Lord and start praying against it, then what happens is we have condomed it, and evil is given more of a foothold. And that's why the scriptures mainly tells us that judgment must begin at the house of God. Because it is the house of God, it's God's people who He holds responsible for not letting things happen. And when evil runs rampant, He holds His people responsible because they didn't pray. We become complacent and we just don't pray. So keep those thoughts in mind. Looks like we're fixing to get a rainstorm coming in right here, so I better get the camera up and get back to the house. Guys, thank you for watching Porch Time, and we'll see you next video. Thank you guys from Deepsouth Homestead.